Hi, good evening, everybody. We're just going to wait a moment here because we still have some people logging in. So we'll give it about another 30 seconds or so. All right, that's great. What a great turnout here on this first Wednesday of October. So welcome to our webinar here tonight. My name is Don Giesbrecht and I am the CEO of the Canadian Child Care Federation. And the Federation is located on lands, the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We recognize all Indigenous people who were here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As Indigenous people have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the culture, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. As we open our hearts and minds to the past, we commit ourselves to working in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. Today, these lands continue to be shared territory and are occupied by many diverse peoples from near and far. A treaty is an inheritance, a responsibility, and a relationship. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And again, welcome to our webinar here tonight. It is a pleasure to have you all joining us here tonight. And we've got Robin McMillan from the Canadian Child Care Federation with us, and we've got Margaret Fraser from Child and Nature Alliance of Canada with us here tonight. And of course, Margaret's going to be doing the presentation here tonight. So a few things, and Robin's going to get to some of them as well here, and I'm going to pass it over to her in just a moment. If you have questions for Margaret, that's fantastic. There is you'll see via your control panel, there is a spot there where you can ask her questions, and we will have time towards the end of the webinar where she'll respond to hopefully all of them. But if there's lots, we may have to respond to them post-webinar, but that's okay. So please interact with us, and even just let us know where you're joining us from, because I know we have people here from across Canada joining us, which is just so fantastic. And Robin's going to go through all the details, but there will be resources and whatnot that will be sent out to you post-webinar. And so maybe with that, and if you have technical questions, by all means too, let us know via the question panel and we'll do our best to attend to them. So for now, I will pass it over to Robin McMillan to go through some of the details and practical points that are necessary for any webinar. Robin, over to you.
Thanks, Don. So first off, I want to thank you everybody for joining us tonight. It's so exciting to be presenting to you this amazing resource that CNAC has developed, and I'm excited to have Margaret here to walk us through it all and bring it to life for us. She's a longtime child advocate. She founded The Lion and the Mouse, where she developed and led innovative child-centered urban outdoor play programs from 2013 to spring 2022. She now supports play and child-centered participatory practices and municipal planning through her work with Metalude. She also facilitates learning amongst forest school practitioners with the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada. Margaret's work benefits from her academic background in community economic development, organizational development, and critical disability studies. So it's wonderful that we have such an expert with us, because again, this website that CNAC has developed is just so full of resources, and I really wanted you guys to see it, and I thought what better way to do it than to have Margaret really bring it to life for us instead of just sending out dull links. So here we go, over to you, Margaret. And before I forget, I know people always ask about certificates, so just to let you know, the certificates will be coming out after the webinar, probably within a week. Usually it takes us about a week to get all that because we use a separate application for that. And as well, there'll be a separate email with some follow-up resources, as Don mentioned, but I can get into that a little bit later. So over to you, Margaret.
Thanks, Robin. I'm very excited to be here with you all. I was saying to Robin just before we were able to connect with the whole group that I've been doing this work getting kids outside for years, and when I saw that CNAC, the organization I'm working with to do this work, put together such an amazing resource, I was thrilled that there's something that's so succinct and impactful that is easy for us to share. So I'm very excited to be able to show it all to you tonight. Before we get going, a little word on who is CNAC. CNAC stands for the Child Nature Alliance of Canada. The mission is more muddy boots outside. CNAC's headquartered on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe and has been undergoing a large process of understanding the work that we need to do to decolonize our practice. I'd like to read to you this statement on this process that we're going through. It's something that's been done with a lot of intention. So I want to just honor that work and those intentions by doing justice to the word. So with CNAC, relationship with the land is at the heart of what we do, and this land is Indigenous land. But the origins of the Child and Nature Alliance of Canada and Forest School Canada are rooted in white settler thinking and approaches. We are an organization currently led by white settlers, headquartered on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. We have imposed a settler colonial way of being with the land because our programs were not co-created with Indigenous people. This approach means we perpetuate and benefit from colonization in the ways that we operate, and this causes harm. We want to repair our relationships with the Indigenous communities and people we have harmed, and if they are willing, work towards co-creating trusting, safe, and reciprocal relationships with them. From that place of reciprocity, we hope to recreate the Forest and Nature School Practitioners course and co-create all future programming with Indigenous partners across Canada. In doing that, we hope that Indigenous and Western worldviews will have equitable voice and space in our programs, so they all have safe, meaningful, and culturally relevant for all participants. Oh, and Robin, I can pass over to you perhaps for the CCCF.
Sure. So a lot of you know who we are. We're the Canadian Child Care Federation. And what we do is we give voice to the sector. So actually, I should put my camera on, shouldn't I, so you can see me? That would be lovely. There we go. Not just a empty talking voice. Yes, so we give voice to the deep passion, experience, and practice of early learning in childcare in Canada. We give space to excellent research in policy and practice to better inform service development and delivery. And we provide leadership on issues that impact our sector. What we pride ourselves in is being able to be a connector as well. And we do our best to reach across the country and make sure our members are connected to not only each other, but also to the best of what early learning and childcare is offering right now, and certainly what is leading in research and development and new resources. So this is a great example of one of our partnerships that we're quite proud of to have with CNAC, because what we do is we run out and find that expertise and then make sure we bring it to you so everyone can get access to that information. There we go. Thank you.
And me, I know Robin gave me an introduction before, but if I come to center myself in this work as I am with you today, I'd also like to acknowledge I'm speaking to you from Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, a meeting place for many Indigenous First Peoples and a place where the Kanien'kehá:ka are the guardians and custodians of the lands and the waters from which I'm speaking to you today. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to take you on a little virtual day in the life of getting outside with the kids. We're going to go from step one, I'm thinking of going out, all the way through to being outside using the resources that are available through this Thrive Outside resource package. So the first step is to understand and demonstrate the where, what, and why of your program. And here I really want to say your program can feel like a really, really big word. Any effort, any time spent to get outside is worthwhile. I'm sure many of you get outside in some way or another. I've included a few pictures of what it can look like to get outside. But the first step is to think about what is outside for you, what is reasonable within your context, what is accessible to the communities you're working with, and beneficial for the spaces where you'll be going. Thinking about how also you have an impact on the land itself. I'm going to go ahead right away and share a first resource. So when you're thinking about which site you may go to, there's this great tool. It's inside of, here, let me scroll up to show you the lovely cover page. I'll just remember, I need to go back to the page there. This is the Risk Benefit Assessment for Outdoor Play, a Canadian toolkit. It was created by a number of partners, researchers, major organizations working in outdoor play across Canada. One of the amazing things about this resource is they've gone through, and not only have they listed the kinds of things you should think through so that you've really done your due diligence of care. Look at this, they've gone so far as to make you checklists. Okay, they're really helping everybody cover their bases so we can think more about how we're going to go outside and be in relationship with the communities we're working with the land, and know that they've helped us cover our bases. So this first tool is the site risk assessment form. You can put in what your site is, who was there. And what's interesting here is it's to think about what things on this site do I need to consider when I come out? Is there a creek I need to consider? Are there trees that after a windfall, well, perhaps we need to look if something's fallen, those kinds of elements. Are there pesky squirrels? I've worked on sites with squirrels that are gonna throw things at you or eat through your backpack. So these are these kinds of things you can consider as you're selecting your site that help with planning how you're going to be on this space. That's the first part of it I want to show you. So that's the where of your activity or your experience or program. Then here we can get into the why. This is another tool from that same toolkit, the Program Experience Risk Benefit Assessment. So when we say, what's the experience? Well, the experience could be sledding. It could be hiking. It could be taking a walk down the street to look at the colors of the leaves. It can be truly anything. And what this form helps us do is to note what kinds of elements we should be considering when we go into this activity. So we can name our site, the date it was reviewed. Great thing is these experiences, they change over time. The sites change over time. We always review these forms. Potential risks involved with the activity. If I take the sledding example, it is possible to bump your head, of course. You know, head injuries happen. And so you can consider what kinds of actions you might take. And of course, in these, you always want to look at any policies in place with the organizations you're working with that can help inform these actions. But just the act of going through this form is huge, and being able to show that you've really done your due diligence in terms of understanding the situation and taking an informed decision about risk benefit. And something I'll also highlight on here is there's, in the risk category, there's also taking into account specialist input, if any. So if there's something where you throw your hands up in the air and you think, I don't think I really know about that, there's a lot of researchers who do a lot of really good work on outdoor play, particularly around risk and like harm reduction, things like that. So chances are someone may have posed the question and you might be able to get the input from some kind of a specialist, or that work may have already been done within an organization you're part of, or by someone like CNAC, for example. And here we have this little part on the bottom again. Any information you might need, technical input. If I was going to take kids whitewater rafting, never done it, don't particularly plan to, but I recognize I would definitely need a specialist for that activity. And so if I come back to what I had said, the where, the what, and the why of the program as you think through this experience. There's other great resource here, which is a pitch deck with the Thrive Outside resources for outdoor play and learning in schools. And what I love about this is it's people who've been doing this work a long time have put together their best whys of why this work should happen, and some simple explanations. If you're wanting to do a kind of experience or program that goes enough outside of the norms of your daily work that you need to go on a field trip, or that it requires some sort of a special permission, you're going to have parents meeting you in a different location, something like that, or as far as going full on, we're going to be doing forest and nature school every day outdoors. This is a great pitch deck to be able to explain to anyone who needs, whose buy-in you really need to make this happen. So it could be a director, it could be parents, but it's a great little capsule of why go out and do this work. You can see it has things about COVID, also some lovely pictures. So if you're just starting out and you haven't done it yet and you don't have pictures of those magic moments, I find it really helpful to have someone else share their magic pictures. Here we go. We have the outdoor play and learning is child-led, educator-supported, unstructured. What is play? So a great resource for the why of getting outside with children, whatever that context may look like for you. I'm gonna go back now. That was the, as I said, the first step. So now that we know where we're going, what we're gonna do there and why, well, we can actually start to get ready. So what would we bring with us? Well, I have my handy dandy adventure backpack. Something I really love about this one in particular, I hope you don't see anything that looks like product placement, is I have a whistle. What? Oh, I don't have a whistle. I did have a whistle before this bag went on too many adventures. But a backpack that lets me hold all the things I need close to me, because I know I'm going to be running with them. I'm going to be keeping up with someone. And inside of my backpack, a first aid kit. Now I know there are many, many, many kinds of first aid kits, things that can go in first aid kits, and especially a first aid kit in a scenario where you're anticipating levels of risk can feel a bit daunting to put together. So I have another resource for you here. This is from the Thrive Outside, What's in Our Kit? Slide right back up. So we start with the first aid kit. What do we have here? You can see our general contents, the dry bag to keep the supplies dry. I'll just highlight the things that are a bit more specific to the outdoor context. So something to note is that when you have a red bag or a red first aid kit, it's highly visible. It's something that you can put it in a tree and say, you must be able to see this bag at all times. Which is always handy in terms of keeping your group together. That's that stay in sight tool. Dry bags, keep everything inside dry. The bug spray, Blue Dawn dish soap for poison ivy removal. It's a little extra one. You can see most of the things in here are quite similar to what we'd see in a standard first aid backpack. I'll also highlight toilet paper and trowel. Sometimes when you go out and you get farther from bathrooms than may be particularly comfortable, and being prepared just in case is always better than afterwards finding yourself wondering how you'll handle something that just came all on its own. We also have here, so one thing that's handy is to have the first aid kit divided into two. The ouch kit, that's the standard boo-boos, the I scraped my knee kind of a thing. And then to also have the trauma kit. So we have this level here of, okay, a serious incident has happened, and now I can pull out the trauma kit. If I don't want to have to be pulling out the trauma kit for a scraped knee, I might lose something, it might get dirty, may no longer be sterile, so we keep it that way. When we go beyond the first aid, we have our loose parts. These are these open-ended items that can be anything you want, anything the children want in their play. Hauling them in IKEA bags is amazing because you can wash them. They're durable, they're tough, they open wide, they're highly visible, so you don't lose them often. So some of the examples here, we have pots and pans, some burlap, some fabric, books, rope. I'll do another little special mention to rope, which is to know that rope can bring, it does inherently bring risk when it's present on a site. It can do serious damage if it's around a throat, rope burn, things like that. I like to number my ropes. I like to know where they are. I like to be the one who distributes them. There's lots of ways to manage rope, but to be aware that that is a very helpful and at times really essential item to outdoor exploring, depending on the kinds of activities you're getting into. And it's one we also need to be really aware of how we're going to use it. What else have I got here for you? Oh, more books. You can see the magnifying glasses. Having something to lay materials out on can be so helpful. I find if there's a defined space on the ground where we're keeping our materials, they magically seem to stay there, which means at the end of the day, I'm looking for fewer things and they're not quite as dirty as if they'd been carted off to a mud pit unintentionally. And another thing we have here is clothing hygiene materials. So knowing that, okay, you may need some extra mittens, you may need some extra socks, even more so than when you are having a regular day with children. And of course, to know that whatever you're bringing out with you, you want to be sure you bring it back in. You know, to be aware of that impact that we're leaving on the spaces that we're going to, and thinking about how are we benefiting from going outside, and how also is this space benefiting from us having been there. If you're able to leave it a little bit better, healthier, happier than when you came, then that's really the dream. So that's the kit. So because I have my kit ready for our virtual outing, I will put on my backpack now for our next step. Got our materials ready. I'm going to prep myself. Okay, so what that means is dressing for the weather. And I will tell you something, even if you feel like you move a lot when you're with children, very rarely have I seen adults who move as much as the children themselves, which means whatever you recommend children wear to be warm, to be dry, to be clean, you need for yourself and then some. And I have another little resource here for what to wear for teaching outdoors. So I have here a warm weather example, sun hat, sunscreen, a loose fitting long sleeve shirt. If you're in a tick area, then really long pants, long shirts, your socks pulled up is the way to go. Running, hiking shoes, something that you're going to have stability in as you're moving. And again, thinking for yourself as well as for the children, extra hats, extra socks, all those little things that go a long way for comfort. And especially when you're dealing with heat here, thinking of having spray bottles to mist people, having water sources. These are things that are going to go a long way to helping you be comfortable outside. Here we go to the cold weather. That's what I'm all about, as we're in fall here today. Your warm hat, neck warmer, mittens. Something I want to highlight here is the idea of layering. Your base layer is what's going to be right on your body. The mid layer is to trap in the air, okay? So fleece is really great for that. And then having a water resistant outer shell. That means when it rains, I can put on the shell. When it's not, I can take it off. When I've been running, oh, now I can take off also my mid layer if I need to. And so what that does is it means as my body temperature changes with my movement, with the sun, I don't find myself sweating 1 minute and frozen the next because I'm able to adapt with the weather as it's changing, which can go, again, a long way to keeping your feet dry, yourself cozy, and being able to stay outside. Hand warmers and feet warmers can be great. And again, if you're not moving as much as the kids, then that's something you definitely want to be thinking about having, and as well as for the children. Some, you know, get colder faster. And then, of course, we have wet weather. It can truly happen at any time of the year, depending where you live. We have a hat. Okay, you can have your mittens if it's cold, being sure if it's a wet weather, you want multiple mittens because they will, of course, get wet. Rain pants or shells are really handy. I know I sit a lot on my butt. Recently, someone introduced me to something they called a butt flap, which is like a little piece of neoprene, almost like tarp, that they tie around their waist. And then whenever they sit down, they have an extra waterproof layer. That's amazing too. There's lots of ways to do this, but we want to make sure you are as waterproof as the children. If you're going outside to jump in puddles and you can't jump in a puddle, then you are likely going to, you and your comfort may be the reason you end up going inside. You want to be able to follow those kids as much as you can. And another little trick here for the wet weather is having grocery bags. They prevent things from getting more wet. You can also put them in, if your boots are wet and you have dry socks, you can put on dry socks, put a grocery bag over them, and then put them back in the boot. It's perhaps not the most comfortable boot experience, but it beats wet socks any day of the week. So that is getting ready yourself to go outside. Okay, so now it's time to go. Now, when I start my day outside, I don't start it right away when the kids are there. I have my bags, I have my hat, I'm ready myself, but I also have all that great risk assessment paperwork that you did when you were thinking through the experience in a little clipboard, because it's very satisfying to feel this official. They're really very handy to write on all the time. And that's where you can do the quick over and say, okay, I've already done an evaluation of what could happen on this site. Now I'm going to do the quick check of, did anything happen since the last time I was here? And that's where the rainstorm, the windstorm that knocks over the tree, this is where you're going to catch it. And you're going to maybe say, hey, it's not the day to take that path. You might go and say something that happens on sites I've worked on and say, someone had a bonfire last night. I no longer feel comfortable coming to play in this exact area until it's been cleaned up. So that visiting the site ahead of time as you're imagining how you're going to be working on the land is important. And just as important is going out there before you go with the kids to just take that last look and see what's changed, because very rarely are we the only people or factors or influences present on the land where we're working. Now, once we get out there, we're going to meet the kids. We're going to do a welcome. There's all kinds of ways to be with the kids. And what I'm showing you here is some risky play. So now that these kids are doing it, I'm watching them. I've thought through the experience of climbing the trees, of what I'm going to consider, how high I'm comfortable with them going. And now, oh, I didn't anticipate it, but I can see I have multiple kids climbing at once. And this is where another tool comes in handy. When you're out there and the kids are doing their thing and you're just following along. Whoop, all right, jumping. This is where I use the dynamic risk assessment. This is a lovely visual, one page. I love it. I like to print it out, keep it on the clipboard so that I can just look at it and go, oh, right, okay. I know what I'm doing here in this new situation. I have some things I can think through before I say anything, truly. So the idea is press pause. Just say, oh, maybe I'm going to take a minute, show those kids that there's a way. We need to just pause. Then you're going to get on the same team. You're going to talk together and have a shared process of thinking of what is it we want to do and how are we going to make sure that this happens safely. And that's the moment when you can share your concerns. So I could say, I noticed there's a couple of you on the same tree, on the branch. I'm wondering if that tree trunk is strong enough to hold you both. I'm wondering what might happen if one of you slips, for example. And that's where, as a group, you can then generate ideas about how you're going to be safe and how you're going to go for it or don't. And this is something I think is important. Sometimes when we're about getting kids outside and playing, we think that it has to be all the time, yes. I think it's really important to really reflect and think and talk with the children before something ever gets to a no. And there are times when, for the safety, be it emotional or physical safety, the answer does need to be no. And as adults, we are there to ensure that framework exists for the kids, for their well-being, so everyone can feel safe and so that everyone can flourish. So that's that what to do in the sticky moments where we think this is beautiful, but am I really letting this happen? There we are. And now, oh no, we're outside and it starts raining. This is where I'm gonna do my quick change. My rain hat. I'm ready for everything. And so when we're outside and it starts to rain, I know if I wasn't ready, my reflex might be, well, we have to go inside. But I am ready. I have my hat. I have extra socks. And I even have here my tarp. I won't take the time to show you this video now. I just want to show you that this exists. Again, in the Thrive Outside resources, a lovely bilingual video showing multiple ways to set up a tarp. So not just for rain, for shade, for shelter, for play. It's a really amazing tool. And once you get comfortable with it, you can see it can extend your days outside. It can open up all kinds of possibilities. So that's part of my kit, right, as we named what we were putting in the backpack. We have a few other inclement weather scenarios we can work through. So here's some heat ones coming first. Staying hydrated, shade. Again, if you have your tarp, you can make your own shade. Monitoring, of course, for dehydration, heat exhaustion, heat-related illnesses. If we're in the wind speeds, right? And here they are, Thrive Outside. They know what they're doing here. Naming that daily site risk assessment that we did at the beginning of the day with our clipboard. The winds here, we can also see if they're major. If you have major winds, it may be that the right choice is to go inside. And here we have an event in the event of a tornado watch. Again, we want to say yes as much as we can, and we never want to say, we want to be able to say, you know what, there is a time to go inside when this is for safety. And here I have rain. So being prepared with extra gear, multiple bags, and those famous tarps. And here, thunderstorms. And that's one of those tricky things when you go outside, if you know there's a thunderstorm warning, you really want to think through, where would we go? What would we do? And what would we even, not just what would we do when the thunder comes, but what would we do once we're hiding out? Do we have materials to be able to spend our time there? And we also have the extreme cold. That's where we come back to how we're dressed, and also seeing how we may need to shift our plans potentially, so that people can remain comfortable and so that the kids can really be in the optimal place to be enjoying what's happening outside, and to be in a place where they're able to grow and try and push themselves, all while still respecting their limits, of course. This is not an extreme sport. I like to say that too. It's not an extreme sport. Oh, I'm just going to come down now back to our slideshow. So here we have our tarp. We're very proud of ourselves. And because we stayed outside, look what happened. We were safe outside. We were perhaps uncomfortable, but we found a way to stick it out. And now we have these beautiful mud rivers. We have some play moments that we would have missed if we hadn't been prepared and if we hadn't done our work ahead of time to think how this day may go. And once you've been through that, well, the next big step is to consider what happened, so what, now what? So if I come back to this image here, we can say, what happened? It rained, yes, and then the kids started building here their little rivers. We have lakes. Okay, so what? So what that they built these lakes? Well, we can see there's cooperative play happening. We can see there's problem solving skills. There's fine motor skills at play here. We can see children exploring their environment in a sensory way. There's so many benefits that we can take from these just couple of photos, knowing that they're part of a much larger experience. And then we can say, so now what? Well, now as the person viewing this, I can say, as the adult observer, and say, so what would I do? What could I do now? Well, I could ask a question. I could say, I wonder what will happen if more water comes. We can say, I wonder what else would make a great bridge. All these kinds of things. I notice that you're finding ways to connect. I notice that you're digging. And these little questions, the act of being noticed, can really open up a whole new layer of outdoor play for the kids. And really validate and show that we are valuing the experience they're having there. Often playing in the dirt and being muddy is not something they're used to being congratulated for, depending on what's the sort of daily experiences of this child. So being able to be there and say, okay, what now? Where could this go next? Another nice way to think about it is to look and say, well, how in this moment is this experience touching the heart, the head, the body, and the relationships? So we go here again. Can say, well, perhaps there's self-esteem happening here. There's that problem solving I mentioned. There's the fine motor, which is the body. And we can also add that relationships, that developing social skills, problem solving as a group. So you can see I'm leaning us in here to also show you how it so naturally connects to early learning and school age learning. I mean, lifelong learning goals. That we would hope for, to have children and have people who feel well, who feel grounded, who have a relationship with the land and the relationship with the communities around them. And it just happens naturally when we are ready to be outside and when we've done the work ahead of time to be able to enter into these relationships in an intentional way. And of course, then you can head back in, thinking about all the things that happened today, and pack your bags again. Think, what would I bring tomorrow to further this inquiry? And something else I want to add in there is to think about moving at the rhythm of your group. So I said in a couple ways that, you just a walk down the sidewalk looking at the leaves is a great way to be engaging in this kind of process. So getting outside is a process. It doesn't matter. It's not about going to the deepest woods. I like to say there's a nature continuum from a dandelion in a sidewalk to an old growth forest, and all of them are valuable, and all of them are invitations to approach the world around us through this lens of relationships, to say, I'm going to develop a relationship with the land, I'm going to develop a relationship with the community around me, with the children, with being co-learners together, and to say, it's not an extreme sport. It's not about going the farthest. It's not about staying out the longest. If everyone in the group is miserable because it really is very cold and there really is a lot of wind, and yes, we brought extra socks, but we still are just feeling so clenched that we can't even imagine what we might dig into today for an adventure, then it's good to listen to the children, to listen to yourselves, and to recognize that moving slightly outside of your comfort zone to experience something new is one thing, and being forced so far out of it puts you in a position where you're just not in a space to be thinking in a way that is about connecting with others. When the focus needs to be on protecting yourself, then we're not in it for the connection anymore. So I want to say, getting out to a playground and taking a moment to look at the trees around it is valuable. And you can pack for that, and you can have a process based around that if that is where your group is at, and that is where your organization is at, where you are at. We really want to have this be a process, and the tools that are shared in this are to help you feel confident in the process where you are going with it and where the children are leading you. And that's really a key. If the kids want to get outside in the rain and you're uncomfortable, we've got the tools to help you get on the same page as them. So that's about the tour of the tools that I have here to show you for this virtual day out. So I'll just go over these steps again about how we would approach this, and I can name the different resources that apply to it. I know Robin will also share them with you at the end or at another point. So step one is understanding and demonstrating the where, what, and why of your program, of your activity, of your outing. Step two, we've got prepare your materials. That's that famous backpack of loose parts, your first aid kit that doubles as a visual reminder not to stray too far. Prepping yourself, making sure you are able to keep up with the kids and the way you are dressed for this day. And step four is going out. So doing that check again, what's on the site, meeting the kids and being able to observe and respond in that dynamic moment with them with the dynamic risk assessment. And then step five is reflecting on it, asking what, so what now, and then getting ready to do it all again. So thank you all very much for listening to the more structured component of what I have to share today. I just maybe want to show you one last thing, which is to let you know, where do I have it here? Oh, this was a last minute decision to show it. Oh, here we are. If you're really interested in digging into how that learning comes outside, there is this other resource, the Teacher's Guidebook for Bringing Learning Outside. So if you're really considering outdoor learning as part of an educational approach, a centerpiece for the learning goals of children you're working with, I invite you to check this out. Again, this is a Teacher's Guidebook for Bringing Learning Outside, once again with the Thrive Outside resources. So if this idea of getting out there speaks to you in a way you really want to incorporate it, you can see we have here literacy activities, numeracy activities, cultivating wonder in your schoolyard, all kinds of elements, routines, rituals, traditions that can help make outdoor play the centerpiece of the experience, rather than I guess that's it, to say there, if you're at a point where you really want to do that and take it to that level, this resource does exist as well, for taking it just that step farther to build a whole learning plan around it. All right, now I promise I'll stop my sharing and wonder if we have any questions, anything that's percolating in your brains.
I don't see any questions just yet, but you're welcome to post them right there while we're finishing up here. And thank you, Margaret. That was amazing. I'm so inspired, and I actually would love to get outside right now. I might go for a walk, but it is nighttime, but that's okay. It really brought to life a lot of those elements that a lot of us I know think about within our programs, but for one reason or another haven't quite gotten out there to do them in a real impactful way. So it's great because it really brings it down to details and steps that people could do each and every day that aren't intimidating. You know, anybody can do this and everybody should do this. So I think it's a wonderful resource that you guys have developed at CNAC, and thank you for bringing it to life, because it just means so much more now that it's been lifted off the page by you in such an entertaining and engaging way. I know lots of people are interested. They've been posting things about what the link is, and for sure, I will be sending out an email, a follow-up email that'll include a bit of a summary and just where you can access all these resources. And I did put the link up in the question box. It's the thriveoutside.ca, but I'll put that in there again. And also a reminder that your certificates for participation, because I know some of you need that for your certification and that type of thing, that will be sent out as well, probably within the week. So just give me a week to kind of get all that together. And I wanted to remind people that we're actually doing another 2 webinars with CNAC. The next one's going to be in November, and it's talking about getting outside in urban settings. which goes into a bit more detail about some of the things we've talked about tonight. And then one in December, talking about exceptionalities outside. So that's to do more with children's behavior, children's abilities, disabilities, that type of thing. And I know sometimes that can be a barrier. And I think it'll be a wonderful opportunity to take some of the intimidation of that as well for people. So we're looking forward to hosting 2 more webinars before the end of the year with CNAC. So thank you very much.
And I can say, Robin, I'm very happy. I'll be back for those.
Oh, good. I wasn't exactly, I don't mention your name because I wasn't sure.
Yeah. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited for both, and I'm excited for the urban settings one, because I'm based in Montreal, as I said, in Guidebook, and I worked in very urban settings with children, and I've even worked in completely concrete schoolyards, getting kids outside. So that's an exciting adventure for me, and with the exceptionalities as well. I know you mentioned in my intro, I have a background in critical disability studies, and so that goes so fully with this playing outside component to me, that I'm really excited to get to connect and bring those elements to life as well, about what it really looks like.
Oh, for sure. Because, you know, when I was doing my bit of research too, because we're always trying to look for topics that people are interested in discussing within webinars. And I really don't see a lot or hear a lot of conversation about exceptionalities outside. And I think that's a really important piece, because I think where maybe some people aren't quite ready to talk about it, they do want to learn more about it because they're curious about it and they're not sure how to tackle that, so to speak, right? And I think there are many opportunities to take children with special needs or various exceptionalities, whether it's behavioral or cognitive or physical or that kind of thing, that outside is for everyone. And how can we make that possible? You know, so I think that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, one of my great joys in my work with CNAC is getting to offer myself to be that person you can just ask.
Yeah, that's what everybody needs, you know?
Just ask me.
Exactly.
Robin and Margaret, I won't activate my camera here, but Robin, there are a couple questions that have come up here while you were both chatting. Do you see them there?
Yes, and I'm just actually trying to go through those a little bit just before we sign off. So I think I went through some of those. Okay, there's someone say thank you. Thank you very much. Do you have any specific resources about the benefits of mud and being dirty? It's a large challenge getting our board and parents on board with getting dirty. Well, I think there's some things on Thrive Outside about that, isn't there?
Yeah, I actually have it up in the background. I can just go right to show it.
Sure.
Right here. So the lovely picture that was the beginning of the slide presentation is actually, it's taken from the Thrive Outside website. So you can see right here, it's the Thrive Outside. And it has here resources for various kinds of actors in your community. So what we lived through today was primarily from this Riverview preschool section, although the resources are interconnected wherever they're pertinent. We also have leisure organizations, we have elementary schools, and we have parents. So, and we have caregivers. So this here is the caregiver section. And here we have for parents. So if you have people who are a bit hesitant because they're not really sure, what is this? Why should I be on board with it? Well, this is where I really like that it's organized by by the different kinds of people in your community who you may want to speak to about this, about outdoor play. So here you can say the frequently asked questions. Here we have, you know, some of the what to wear, what to say instead of be careful. But the frequently asked questions can be really helpful to think of, like, okay, so these are some of the, when people say no, these are some of the reasons why they do. In terms of specifically about the messy part, one of the things I know a lot of groups end up doing over time is having their own mud clothes and rain clothes for the kids in the program, especially the full one-piece ones. I've heard stories of people saying, like, we all wear the one pieces, and for respect of everyone involved in supporting this project, the kids get hosed down before they go inside, because we want everyone to love outdoor play days, including the custodian. So those are some examples of thinking through, if there is a negative reaction, is it because there's an impact on this other part of our community, and is there a way we can mitigate it? And even if it's the kids supplying their own outdoor gear, is there a way to say, okay, so then that can live here, you don't have to carry the mud home with you each day? Those are just a few little things that pop in my mind that I hope might be helpful for you in that situation.
Someone's asked a question about physical boundaries. So I guess we have children outside and how you restrict the physical boundaries, and that could be worrisome, I think, for some.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is if you have that red pack, you can say you have to be able to see the pack. I know that also involves having kids who are going to respect that. Something else I really like to do is walk the boundaries with the kids before you get out. So say we're going to arrive out, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to walk the boundaries. And I'm going to show we're going to move together, especially for kids who may have some difficulty with that visualization component. I've heard people also use different kinds of tape in the trees. So if you've gone past this tape, you've gone past the limit. But thinking through, I think a lot of kids in their excitement may go beyond a boundary, but it's not intentionally. It's not because they don't respect the fact that there are boundaries. It's often because it's not visual, it's not concrete. And when you're in an outdoor space, everything can sort of blend together and the excitement can carry you from one spot to another. So I would say making those boundaries visual and physically moving through them together is a way to really get them anchored before the play experience happens.
Great. Yes. And there was another question I thought I'd pull forward. What was it? It was, I've lost it. Oh, is there information about teaming up with Indigenous educators, elders, etc., to create a better understanding and relationship with the land, i.e. knowing which plants to be picked, what we can eat, that kind of thing?
So something we've been doing a lot of with CNAC is really looking at how we build those relationships with Indigenous communities. And before we start asking, thinking of what we are looking for from a relationship, understanding that we first have to have one. So the first step is always to build a relationship, to start to first know, well, whose land are you on? What are meaningful ways that you can start to connect, and looking at what information has already been offered by Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders for use by people who want to get out on the land. Sometimes you can yourself listen to a sort of, there's webinars, there's podcasts, there's books, but can be a really great way to get that first entry yourself into some of those elements. I know, for example, sometimes through friendship centers, through specific museums that are community specific, those can be great places to go. And at the same time as you're increasing your knowledge, you have opportunities to engage in discussion, to ask questions. So I guess what I would say is I don't have a specific resource of how to do this, but I can share with you some of the process that we're learning to really value in CNAC. And something I would say, well, I'd say it's valued for a while, but something that we're learning now is also how we can support that process of relationship building with new practitioners who know the importance of building these relationships from the beginning and of recognizing Indigenous knowledge and ways of being and saying, okay, but I'm getting going. So the stories that have been written and published are at the very least a great, you can read books. I actually have one lovely book. It's from the West Coast, if anyone's out there. It comes from the Clahaman Nation. And it's a book called Welcome to Here. And when you, I wish I had it handy with me, but when you open it, there's an image of, I believe it's all plants, but that you can find when you walk the land and in the territory of the Clahaman Nation. And then inside is also the word in Ayajitham, which is their local language. So that's a way to be able to connect what we're going to see when we go out for a walk with not just, okay, saying this has been here since time immemorial, like Indigenous people, but saying, hey, this is something that has value, and this is how we can talk about it, respecting that this didn't start existing when settlers came and gave it names in settler languages. Yeah, hope that's a helpful starting point. If you want to keep talking about this, I would love to be in touch. It's something I do a lot of work on, but it's hard to give a blanket answer.
Oh, for sure. No, that's very helpful. And I think someone's mentioned something about muddy buddies, and everyone was quite excited about that. I think
Yes,
there's
that's those one-piece suits. You can hold it right down.
They're great. That's like the best thing ever. And the other nice thing about that is the kids are all easily identifiable, and it's also everyone's wearing the same thing. So it's not like there's some kids out there some magnificent outdoor gear and some of the kids out there with like, flip-flops on. Everyone's kind of got the same baseline, right? And then you can just start from there, and then you know how everyone's kind of feeling because you've all got the same kind of layers on. So I think that's probably really helpful too.
Yeah,
For
absolutely. And that brings something I think is interesting too, as you go out and you say getting yourself ready. You want to be dressed warmly, but if I show up and I'm dressed in the latest gear, well, that can reinforce the idea that if you don't have the latest gear, then you don't have your place there.
Yeah.
So I like to have a few extra. I like to have a little bit of an array.
Oh, for sure. And I think
Oh,
that's the whole thing. That's the joy of being outside too, is you could look very higgledy-piggledy and just be dressed in a crazy orange coat and red pants, and who cares? But I mean, it all works, and I think that's a big piece because,
absolutely.
I mean, from my own experience, my son was in a forest school that he went to once a week, and I had this grab bag full of just everything and anything, and I found most of the stuff at thrift stores just because I knew what labels to look for. And he had a million changes of clothes because inevitably, I wasn't even out of the parking lot and he was soaking wet already and had to change
Yeah.
his clothes. So
Yeah.
but that's part of the experience, right? I mean, he was finding lakes and rivers and ponds, and that's just what he loved. So, I mean, I think just being prepared for that and encouraging people that you don't need all the fancy gear. You just need lots of layers and lots of outfits to change into, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and I've even had like with toddlers in particular, when you're still in that phase where you might have fleece footy pajamas.
Oh yeah, those are
Well, they're
great.
fleece. They're
Yeah.
pretty warm and they cover the whole body. Like
Oh, I know. And these days you can get onesies for anybody. I mean, geez.
exactly. And people look at me and they're like, okay, I guess I must need like extra long johns and extra this for my 2-year-old. And I'm like, do they have fleece
Pajamas.
pajamas? If they comfortably can fit in the boots, like,
Good to go.
and then nobody's crying if they're soaking wet and muddy and you can't quite get the dirt out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good point. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. This has been really informational and I think really inspiring for people. And I'm looking forward to hearing some comments. So please forward your comments to me. I'm more than happy to hear about them. And I can also put my email in here. And I will pass them on to Margaret as well. So I will be sending you, as I said, your certificates plus a follow-up email with resources in there too. I'm going to get my acronym right. Oh, CSGE.ca. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so we will be in touch anyway, and looking forward to the next 2 webinars we're going to be having with you as well. And please tell your French colleagues, anybody, that we will be offering this in French as well. So
And
we
it
will.
will be me. I'm bilingual.
Yes,
I'll do them all.
c'est bien. Yeah, so that's wonderful. So we're really grateful for that. And we'll be sending out the dates for that too, so you can inform your colleagues about that as well, and some information about how to register and that kind of thing. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and thank you, Margaret, and we'll be seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.